always start my lectures with this little Super 8 film. Some artists keep sketchbooks, and my sketchbooks are a lot of them are Super 8 films. So this is one of them. I think it'll make sense as I go on why I'm showing it. I'm just going to let it play. So this surveillance of Las Meninas was done surreptitiously, trying to avoid the guards in the Prado and actually be able to film the painting. With that came along the initial idea to sort of animate the painting and make a work around Las Meninas. But before I talk about that piece, which I think a lot of people know already, I'm going to talk about some much earlier ideas, and I'm really going to start this talk talking about surveillance. This is not an artwork. This is the surveillance monitors on the platform of my local subway station in Brooklyn. I've always been obsessed with these monitors. And if you live in any urban area, almost anywhere in the world, you are under surveillance. You are being watched. You are on camera somewhere. And this starts to beg a lot of questions, some of them quite troubling, and others of them more creative, like what happens if you started to insert dialogue into these? What would happen if you started to insert narrative into them? What happens if they had subtitles? So I watch these monitors a lot in different places that I go, and at one point I even put in a proposal to the MTA in New York to intervene with these monitors and add my own footage and my own dialogue or subtitles into them. I mean, of course, the proposal was rejected. That kind of goes without saying. But I'm going to show you sort of where it went, which is, this is again Super 8 film. Let's see if I can get this running. This works on the same principle as those surveillance monitors, except that this time the surveillance is done with Super 8 cameras instead of video cameras. And I'm behind the surveillance device. And the Super 8 camera is quite well cut out for that because nobody takes it seriously. It looks like a toy. This piece is called The Whites Were a Mystery. It was shot in West Africa. And I'm going back now about 12 or 13 years just because I want to show how things are cyclical. And this piece is very important to the piece I'm going to show at the end. I mean, this piece is using a kind of a random order that I have readdressed in White on White, which is the last project I'm going to show. In this case, it's extremely low tech. There's one screen playing in real time, there's one screen playing at half speed, and there's a story in the middle. And so how the juxtapositions of these three pictures take place is always different. They will always align in a random order that is never the same, kind of like a slot machine. Sometimes you get really lucky. So the story tells about these white Europeans hanging out in West Africa, seemingly awaiting their statute of limitations to run out because they were obviously on the lam, unable to go back to Europe. So, but to take the surveillance idea to another realm, when I started making work, I was more of an installation artist. I did a lot of things that were completely site-specific, were built into very specific spaces, responded to the architecture there, had a lot to do with architecture, and a lot to do with trying to fix a problem. And so in this case, this is a combination of an architectural intervention or an installation and a video piece. The video piece is obviously on 3 screens. What you see in the bottom corner is a ramp that goes out the window. We were on the 4th floor. And this is one of the first shows I ever did in New York as a solo show. It was a 300 square foot room that had nothing at all to recommend it. There was nothing interesting or attractive about this room, and there was nothing to work off of. So here I was, a site-specific artist, trying to respond to architecture, and the room was completely boring and had 2 windows that looked out on a light shaft. So 6 feet away, when you looked out the windows, was another building. So I was hanging out in this room in the middle of February, and I kept going there every night trying to say, what the hell am I going to do in this room? It's really a horrible space. And I started hearing this cooing, and it was the sound of pigeons that were nesting on every windowsill of the building. And so I started realizing that that was what was important about the space, and that was what could be magnified, and that's how you could bring the life into the space. So what happened in terms of the architectural intervention was a ramp out the window. We took out the 4th floor window. I built a ramp on the bottom of the 1st floor roof that went up 3 stories, and there was an observation tower, so you could observe the bird life in the air shaft. The piece is called Ornithology, and you become the ornithologist. You also end up, being in the piece and being under surveillance yourself. There's a person on the ramp. During the course of the show, the eggs of this bird hatched and looked like giant dinosaurs on the screen. A piece in the Istanbul Biennial was sort of a similar idea. It used live surveillance cameras, 12 live surveillance cameras on switchers that were observing life all over the city. And this was built into the Circuitry train station in Istanbul. And then on the back wall were these 4 stories in English and Turkish. So those stories became the subtitles for the pictures. And the implied narrative started to work with those images, and whoever came in front of those cameras became the subjects of those stories. I'm going to go very quickly through this piece because I want to spend some longer time on this stuff at the end. This piece was another idea of sort of a film intervention that also used the architecture. There was 100 feet of film shot in the lobby of the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. The Marriott Marquis in Times Square is another sort of difficult architectural space, or a troubling architectural space. It was built, it's a Portman lobby, and it has like what seems like 100 balconies that go up into the air in this atrium. And so it's this locked-in space that, with all these balconies that overlook the center. And so in a way, I'm kind of replicating the balconies of that space, and then I filmed in the glass elevators this kind of surveillance footage. There's 100 feet of film that goes through each projector, 10 seconds delayed, and then goes back up to the ceiling, and so you can see a little bit of how it feels when it's installed. Up a little more. So what you're seeing on that one screen are the 4 images projected. They're 10 seconds delayed from each other, and then what also happens is the sound in the film becomes a round, because that's also playing in a 10-second delay. So this was very much a combination of an installation with a film. The projector tower is obviously the sculptural installation part, and then the surveillance of these balconies is going on the screen, repeated one after the other. I'm not going to be able to show anything from this project, but these are stills from a film called Solace. September 11th happened, and everybody wondered what to do. And I kind of think your only choice in that situation is to keep doing what you're good at, and so I kept filming, which a lot of people like me did as well. It's a 20-minute short film that conflates the reality of that period from the day of September 11th until sort of late October or early November. And I filmed almost every day during that period and then created this 20-minute film. There is a fictionalized moment in it where the singer that you see at the mic there comes in and starts singing Purcell's Music for a While, which is this amazing, she's an amazing soprano and it's an amazing song. But that's too long to show for this talk, so I will leave it for another time. But just, it goes back to the idea of surveilling the moment and being always somehow under surveillance, even when you turn it on yourself. So this goes back to that first Super 8 film that I showed. This is the set for 89 Seconds at Alcázar, which is a film that takes the painting of Las Meninas, that's the painting that you see in the book there, a book about Velázquez, obviously. I saw the painting in the Prado. You saw the little Super 8 film that was the evidence of me trying to steal the soul of the painting, and realized it was so cinematic, and it was photographic in the way that, to me, a Tina Barney photo feels. It had that psychological energy that a snapshot has that you do not see in painting of that period. You almost never see it. What Velázquez was able to do as a painter was capture the psychological content within his characters that in a really profound way. And that made it feel photographic, even though the painting predates photography by, what is it, 200 years, 300 years, something like that. So it was possible to have something imbued with that kind of photographic psychology. Everyone's in motion, right? And so this was about figuring out what happened before and figuring out what happened after it, treating it as a film still. So I'll show you a couple more stills, and then I can show you a couple clips from 89 Seconds. I love this one because you see there one of the actresses, and then the totally modern equipment, and then the space of the painting with no actors in it. This is one of the actors who played the king, and I will show you now a few little excerpts from 89 Seconds. So what I liked about that piece is the way people read into it. There's people come back with all kinds of different narrative ideas about what they think is going on in it. You know, the king is having an affair with the widow who looks like a nun, and it's all in their heads. And it's kind of great that it's all in their heads. I think that's the way it should be. So that's sort of the money shot, that the piece, the thing that people think looks like Las Meninas, which actually looks nothing like Las Meninas. So I'm going to jump forward now to a bit about the rape of the Sabine women. After we made after we made 89 Seconds, there was a real sort of change in terms of the attention that the work got. And I actually had made a piece that could tour, which previously I had always done these things that were kind of tied to a space. Or if they weren't tied to a space, they were like the projector tower. They were incredibly difficult to move. I mean, I did show that piece in more than one place, but it was not easy. So having a piece that could be in multiple shows and could tour changed things a lot, and it could be sold, so that was also a new thing. So it made it possible to do more ambitious work, and I had then put together this group of people called Rufus Corporation and went back to Claudia, our choreographer, who's normally working in Berlin, and said, what do you think of this? And I sent her a picture of The Rape of the Sabine Women by David. I said, let's do a fight choreography. Wouldn't that be cool to do a fight choreography? I mean, everyone wants to do a fight choreography, right? And so she was like, yeah, of course, why not? If you're a choreographer, that would make a lot of sense. So the first thing we did is we somehow, long story short, I decided to shoot in Greece. And we took the core group of people that made 89 Seconds and then hired a bunch of Greek actors and a producer and some crew there. Then the Greek actors came to New York. And it was the middle of January, and we needed to rehearse. So there was no way to rehearse outside, and we needed a place where people could fall down without getting hurt. So we did these first fight choreography rehearsals on a tennis court. And so here you see our cast and the Greek cast and a whole bunch of people who are acting as extras who came on the day of those rehearsals and got together to do these kind of initial fight choreographies on this clay tennis court in the middle of winter in Brooklyn. Can we kill that light? And so we looked at a lot of things in the build-up to creating The Rape of the Sabine Women. I mean, obviously we went back to painting, we looked at these reliefs in the Pergamon. That's a shot from that tennis court day when we did that rehearsal. And then these are some stills from the actual film. That's a still from the film or a production photo made during the film. And this is Bobby Kennedy's campaign. So what we were doing is taking the story of the rape of the Sabine women and updating it to the 1960s, which made a lot of sense to me. I mean, the story is, if you don't know the story of the rape of the Sabine women, it's about the Romans who have a great city. It's it's going to die because they have no women. It's populated by a bunch of thieves and ne'er-do-wells, kind of like Australia. And they realize they have to populate the city. They need to procreate. They go to the neighboring tribe, the Sabines. They ask if they can marry their daughters, and they're shooed away and told to forget about it. So they devise a plan. They hatch a plan to steal the women. They're quite successful with that plan. They steal the women, and the women become Roman. They acclimate. They have babies. They have Roman families. The Sabine men come back to avenge the crime somehow years later. I'm not quite sure why they waited. And the women, the famous painting by David, you see the women putting themselves in the middle of the two armies trying to stop the war of the Romans and the Sabines. In reality, that's not what happened. The Sabines got wiped out. But that's not the myth. And what we were recreating is the myth. And in our case, we didn't really set up Romans and Sabines. We just set up a bunch of G-men that looked a lot like the men in this picture. And as well as the main film, The Rape of the Sabine Women, which is an 82-minute experimental narrative that does not use language, as well as a movie, it's a sound installation. It's a 7:1 surround sound installation, so you hear different voices and different instruments on each speaker. But there were also auxiliary pieces that got made during the filming of that. One of these is a piece called Tempelhof, Take 5 and 7, and I'll play you a little bit of that. Action! Action! So what you're seeing here, it should be pretty obvious, is not the same moment. You're seeing one completely, the actual piece is uncut. These are excerpts, that's why it's fading, but the real piece doesn't fade. It's an uncut choreography in the similar way that 89 Seconds was also an uncut choreography. But in this case, the entire choreography, which took place at Tempelhof Airport in Berlin, was too long to put in the film. It was cinematic in a way that didn't fit feature filmmaking. And that was quite disappointing because the entire choreography is what was interesting. Everybody's walking in unison, all the men are doing things in unison, they open the paper together, they smoke together, they're walking with taps on their feet. And so there were all these things going on, and sometimes things lined up perfectly and you thought you were looking at the same movie, but you're not. And sometimes things failed completely, and the success and failure of that was what was so interesting, the inability of people to actually do everything the same way twice. So to get back to the idea of surveillance, I'm going to show you a little clip from The Rape of the Sabine Women. The film took place in 5 locations. It had 5 acts. It was set up in this sort of operatic or theatrical structure. Maybe I can show you a little bit of those locations. Let's see. This is a still from the final fight scene of The Rape of the Sabine Women that we shot at the Herodian Theater in Greece. Maria Callas and one of our actresses, one of the Greek actresses, again, kind of channeling the 60s thing. And then these are the 5 main locations where we shot the film that we opened in the Pergamon Museum, where the sort of delivering of the myth, the history is redelivered to our characters who are now in the 60s. Then there's Tempelhof Airport, where you just saw that Tempelhof Take 5 and 7 piece, and that's where the convening of the men take place, where they become kind of an army. The abduction of the women takes place in the meat market in Athens. We shot in the actual meat market. We had to pay off the butchers. It was really difficult, but it worked. And then our heyday of Rome is kind of exemplified in this international style 1960s house, a very famous house in Greece called the Valsamakis house that overlooks the Aegean, perfect 60s architecture. And then the final fight scene of these men turning on each other takes place at the Herodian Theater, and also the final part of the movie takes place on a football field in Athens. I feel like we might be running out of time, so I'll show you a bit of the trailer, and then maybe we'll decide if we should show an excerpt from the actual film. So back to the idea about surveillance. This is an excerpt from the actual film that was shot at the Valsamaki's house. That's sort of our metaphor for the heyday of Rome. The men and these abducted women are living this high life in what seems to be perfect 60s splendor. It's possible to have the perfect wife, the perfect house, the perfect life, and it's very much a be careful what you wish for kind of tale. And the idea of that kind of mid-century modernism concept of better living through design, that you could design the perfect future. Of course, it all falls apart in the end. All right, I don't usually show other artworks in my talks, but this is White on White by Malevich. I put this painting up there because when I was talking about making a new piece, a friend of mine said, Eve, you really have to pick a third painting. And I said, no, I don't. I'm really not even that interested in painting. I don't know anything about painting. And he said, no, you really have to pick a third painting. And I very sarcastically said, White on White by Malevich. And the more I started thinking about that, the more I started realizing it would be really interesting to try to understand what it would mean to make a film piece using the ideas that Malevich talked about. And they were very megalomaniac ideas. He called himself the Commissar of Space or the Chairman of Space. At the same time, our main actor, Jeff Wood, who you saw just now in that clip, in his sort of 60s persona of this G-man Roman who had captured his wife, kept saying, I'm going to space, and talking about the space race. And so we started conflating those two things, the literal meaning of space, the Malevich idea of formal space, and tried to think about what it would be to look for that perfect transcendent landscape, that nothingness that is talked about in a lot of the writings of Malevich. What that meant was, first of all, thinking about how to do research about space. And so we went to Star City outside of Moscow. And this is a photo I took in the office of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. His office has been locked down and museumified and kept the same since the day he died. He died in a test pilot crash a few years after he was the first man who went into orbit. So you walk into Star City, which looks kind of like a really messed up 1950s college campus, and it looks kind of abandoned, even though it's the main place where they train cosmonauts and astronauts from all over the world. They have none of the ideas about window dressing that we have in America. They really don't care how stuff looks. But it was really important to them to keep this room untouched from the day Gagarin died. And of everything that you see in Star City, like the centrifuges and the tanks and all of the training equipment, the thing that compelled me the most was Gagarin's office. So this is a photo that I made, a snapshot really. And in the past, I have made things based on photos or pictures, sometimes paintings, sometimes photos. In this case, I decided to remake this photograph. So we built Gagarin's office. I originally built it in a gallery in New York, and then Gagarin's office kind of went into space and started traveling. And so here you see another view of the office. We built pretty much what's in the photo, a little bit beyond what you see in the picture, but more or less what you see in that photo. And then there it is, it kind of drops off into space black, and the room just ends because the photo ends. We also ended up using the photo as a film set, using the installation as a film set, and traveling the installation. It went to Vienna for a show called Space About a Dream, and there was nothing else quite like it in the show because, of course, it's just a 1950s office, right? I mean, with a few telling pieces of paraphernalia, like a rocket. And the globe is Mars, it's not the Earth, and the map is the Soviet Union. But while we were doing this research in the ex-Soviet Union, mainly in Central Asia, we also tried to go to Baikonur, the cosmodrome where they launched to the ISS. We got arrested, got kicked out. It's a military base, you can't go to Baikonur. You can buy your way in, but you have to have a lot of money. So we were there in the middle of the Kazakh steppe, which the Kazakh steppe is nothing, it's blank, there's nothing there. It's a lot like a Malevich painting. It's really empty. And ended up getting on the train to the edge of the Caspian and ended up in a town called Aktau, which at first seemed like the ugliest place you could ever imagine. But as we spent a few more hours there, it started becoming really compelling. I realized it was the perfect place for a kind of retro future noir. And we started shooting a thing called white on white, algorithmic noir. And I'm going to try to set it up for you to run it here. It's not going to run very well because it's meant to run on a big tower. The movie edits live as you watch it. It never plays the same way twice. What you're going to see there is the film. What you're going to see here is the code screen, which is showing you the metadata, the tags and the keywords and the metadata that's controlling the movie. That's a still, but I'm going to see if I can actually get it to run. If we fail at that, I can also show you a trailer, but it's more exciting to try to show you something that I have no idea what you're going to see, and so I'm going to do that. Let me just ride it a little bit. Which is the volume?
So how long have you been in the region for? Lonely?
Well, those are two different questions. Which question would you like me to answer?
Well, you know, do you miss home? Miss those kids you used to teach?
No.
The way the piece works is there's 3,000 film and video clips. There's about 150 pieces of music, and there's 80 voiceovers. And so all of that material is tagged, the voiceovers and the film and video material. And so based on the metadata, based on the tagging, the algorithm edits the film. So what you're seeing there is the metadata that's embedded into the voiceovers and the film and video material, and those things are searching for each other. It's doing data calls to decide what to edit when. Let me see if I can, I want to show you one more thing. I want to talk about one more project that actually isn't my piece. As well as making my own work, my partner and I have been working producing. We run a little micro theater out of our loft in Brooklyn where we've been producing some live theater. And then most recently, we have taken the role of producers for 2 other artists. There are people that have never worked in the art world before. They're in their mid-60s, and they needed help. And so we decided to help them. And we got involved both as producers and also kind of investing in their project. And it's a really interesting piece of work. And so I just want to talk about also that sometimes when you get to a certain level, it's really important to give back. And so what we've done is help these people produce this work. It's going by a working title of Car Wash Incident, and I'm just going to show you 2 dailies. It was shot just a few weeks ago, nothing's edited. I'm going to show you 2 dailies next to each other, and you can see a little bit of that project as well.
Hey, take one of that, please. Bag? You have the bag?
Which bag?
You don't know about the bag?
No, never been here
Let's give it
before.
to me.
Which bag are you talking
Yeah,
about?
that was this morning. I had a hard day at work.
Gave
I
a bag
really don't feel like doing
to the
it.
girl in the red shirt.
Something easy then. How about
Someone
BLT?
told me to give it to the girl in the red shirt.
I do. I've got some bag.
They just told me to get rid of the bag.
Where's the sack? Don't look like that. Look at me, Mom. Look at me. Yes, that bag.
Okay. All right.
Red shirt.
Do
I look like I have a red shirt?
But all right.
Do I look
All right.
like a girl with the red shirt?
Love you too. Yeah. Right here?
Gotta get out of here. The name was on top and it flew over.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, 'cause I was just trying to meet someone here, and I thought, this is kid. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. You shouldn't be lost.
I'm on my way. way to meet a friend. I'll see you.
Have a bag. Sure. Sorry.
Here? Coming soon? Right here?
Sorry to keep you waiting.
It's all right. I gotta go. I've gotta go to the grocery store. My son says to give this to you. Here.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's all.
You know what it is?
No. You? All right.
Did you give it to her?
Yeah, I did.
Did she say anything to you?
I forget. I don't think she said anything to me, but if she said something to me, it was nothing.
Nothing important.
Nothing important.
Did she say something?
Yeah, I gave it to her. Did she say anything? She said.
Did she give her
She asked me if I knew it was on his
But did she say anything? I heard you talking. Did she say
I
anything?
thought you were kind of nervous.
You didn't look inside. You don't have to worry about anything. I just want to make sure
Well,
that
you
you
know,
got rid of
when
that
you're
bag.
nervous, I get nervous.
You don't have to be nervous. Hey, wait, fine.
It doesn't take anything to make me nervous, so you should know better. I don't need this aggravation. It's hot out.
What?
Watch out! You almost hit that guy.
You know that guy?
I don't know him. No. That guy over here almost hit him.
Yeah, he does.
I think
Well,
you.
you know if she
I think
said
there's
she was
something
leaving?
wrong.
She's pretty wrong.
Leaving? What do you mean leaving?
Did that girl tell you she was going to leave?
Well, she did leave. She left. I gave her the bag and she left. All right.
But she's still right
Going
there.
to the grocery store,
that's
and
mom.
I think we'll feel a lot better. There's air conditioning in the grocery store. I know.
Ready to have.
Hey, Mom.
We need to get a
She
tune up.
seems to be waiting. Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe we should get that bag back. Go get the bag back from her.
All right.
Maybe you should just get rid of it.
I think next time I'm gonna drive.
Mom, just get rid of the bag. Make sure you throw it away. I don't want to see it.
It's vaguely familiar. You know it?
Consider it.
I'm waiting for you. Yeah, I know.
Get that bag. Mom, just go get that bag back from her and get rid of it.
All right.
Don't
then
ask
we're
questions.
All right.
Just go get rid of it. I'll be back to get you.
Miss? So now he wants me to take the bag back.
Yeah, you sure?
That's what he says. I was doing what I'm going to be getting in and out of the car.
Yeah, mate. Okay. Yeah, fucking bag.
I'm a better driver than you are. Yeah, I am. Man.
Wait. With the bag?
No? Billy, what's going on?
You don't know about the bag? You know about the bag? You don't know about the bag. The bag's not there.
Well, there's a bag, but someone told me to give it to that girl in the red shirt.
What girl?
Again.
There was
I
a
thought
girl
you-
in a red shirt, and
What is that?
Yeah, well, it's
No,
easy
like,
on a hot night like this. All I have to do is
guy with the
heat up
jacket
the frying
on.
pan for the bacon,
What you doing, Russell?
put the mayonnaise
dark
in the
jacket,
refrigerator.
and then he said, just give it to the girl in the red shirt.
Oh.
So I got rid of it.
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather just go home and take a shower.
I don't know, I just saw her leave. I don't know where she went.
Why are we
I don't know where
stopped?
Where are you going?
I just want to get my car washed.
Yeah, 100 on.
Really, all I want to do is get my car washed. I really, I'm really sorry. I don't know what's wrong.
Hustler boots?
I think I have to do a favor for me.
Yeah.
Run an errand for a guy. Get out of the car. This bag.
I gotta get out of here.
Right out
What
there.
bag?
All right.
Let's swing around the block and pick it up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, yeah. Hurry up.
What bag?
Bag I'm here for.
Oh, you mean that bag?
That's the bag I mean.
Well, some guy told me to give it to a girl in a red shirt.
Sure.
Yeah, a girl in a red shirt. That's what he said.